Tomorrow, Congressman Joe Kennedy is expected to officially announce that he will challenge longtime incumbent Senator Ed Markey in the Massachusetts Democratic primary in 2020. Kennedy wrote in a Facebook post, quote, "Our system has been letting down a lot of people for a long time, and we can't fix it if we don't challenge it." Kennedy represents the latest in a wave of younger Democratic candidates bucking the conventional party wisdom that you wait your turn. And as Democrats eye recapturing the Senate in 2020, candidates like Kennedy could become an extension of the progressive movement that reshaped the House in 2018. Joining me now, Ethan Todras-Whitehill, the co-founder and executive director of Swing Left, a progressive political group credited with helping turn the House blue in 2018. It's good to see you. Welcome back.
Hey, Chris.
So you guys don't get involved in primaries.
No.
Let's say that for starters. But you have supported insurgent candidates who got the nomination. We certainly saw that in 2018. People who didn't necessarily even come from a political background. There's two ways to look at this. Some Democrats will say to me, I'm worried about this as a split in the party. Others say this is a sign that we have the candidates out there available, responsive to their community that can help us take back the Senate. What do you say?
I mean, I think it's just a sign of all the energy out there. What I've been so impressed about with the grassroots is how strategic they are and how many people, some of them are signing on for primary campaigns, but so many more are saying, you know, whoever the Senate candidate is going to be in my state, that's the person that I want to support. How they understand the importance of the Senate, you know, that we can't just take back the presidency. If that's all we do and we leave a progressive agenda in the hands of Mitch McConnell, it's going to be dead on arrival.
Yeah, Politico just did a big story. They say that the path to a Senate majority could run straight through the Sun Belt, and especially in places where the Democrats haven't necessarily tried to be competitive in the past. It can be a complicated financial equation always. Where do you put your money as a party? Where do you put your money as a donor? Understanding all that, and I know you do, how do you see realistically the chances of taking the Senate, and what's the path?
Well, there is a realistic path to taking back the Senate this cycle that there wasn't last cycle. You kind of have to run the same inside straight that you did last cycle in terms of taking seats, but without all the defense you need to do as well, right? Basically, you need to win seats in Colorado and Maine. You need 3 seats or 4 if you don't take the presidency. And so that 3rd or 4th seat is going to have to come from the Sun Belt, from Arizona or one of the seats in Georgia or North Carolina or Texas. So you can't win back the Senate without taking one of those seats. The good news is that those states are starting to trend in the Democratic direction, mostly because of the growing Democratic strength in the suburbs, where people are really rejecting Trump and the GOP. Places like Arizona and Texas are shifting faster towards the Democrats than anyone imagined. And what we're really focusing on is making sure people in those states and anywhere in the country have the tools that they need to be able to make a difference in flipping the Senate.
In cases where Congress has not been able to get anything done because of the Republican Senate, I'm thinking about, for example, gun control, state legislatures have been stepping in a big way. We have 4 state legislatures where there are elections this year, the off year. Virginia is the one that is really competitive, and a lot of Democrats are looking at that as a bellwether for 2020. What are you seeing and sensing on the ground there? Because I know that's something Swing Left has been very involved in.
Yeah, I mean, incredible energy in Virginia and incredible energy around the country to support Virginia. You know, again, I'm so impressed by how strategic this current wave of grassroots organizing is. They understand, for instance, how important state legislatures are, that state legislatures have the power to not only determine who votes in that state, but also how the districts are drawn, who gets sent to the House of Representatives. They're so incredibly important, and they know how close we are to flipping Virginia to a blue trifecta, and that's why we've driven over $500,000 in direct dollars to candidates in Virginia. We're the largest grassroots funder, and it's just a reflection of how important people understand Virginia is and state legislatures are in general.
Ethan Todras-Whitehill, people can go on to swingleft.org and take a look. There's also an interesting new little video, and it says one of the most effective ways to increase voter turnout is to write personal letters. People should go look at that. Ethan, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.